I guess just keep in mind that this is a video essay by a white guy about a movie about slavery directed by another white guy. Just obligatory comment before the video begins. Auteur theory, that which in film analysis says that the director is the sole author and ideator of a film, is not a great look when your movie is about this and your director looks like this guy. Thankfully, in the case of Django Unchained, this guy makes decisions that mostly turn out to be correct, leading to a final product that is simultaneously reflective, emotive, repertory, kick-ass, and still very much a Tarantino flick. It also doesn't hurt that he takes another theory, that of the death of the author, literally. Auteurism in critical film analysis can be useful. When a director confirms or denies theories about their work, we're more inclined to believe them and uphold those statements as facts about the film. When Nazis say that a movie is about a Jewish conspiracy, while the director is like, fuck you, no, it's not about that at all, it's about rampant capitalism, I'm inclined to believe the guy who made it. Auteur theory lets us look at a director's filmography and say, okay, here's what we can expect from a Tarantino film, and here's what he's saying based on that. But on the other hand, if a movie about a black man's experience in the slave-owning South is directed by a white guy, I'm a little more hesitant to call it an authentic depiction of what that would be like. Something especially tricky when we're dealing with a guy who's regularly called an auteur, someone who is venerated as a man with a singular vision, who at this point has more of a mythology behind him than any other director working today. A lot of it bought into by himself. And that's fine. I think his ego is a part of what makes him a great filmmaker. He knows what he wants, and his movies generally rip. But as much as it looks like he might want to be sometimes, Tarantino is not black. With a guy like Tarantino, though, so much of the hype around a movie is based on it being a product of his singular vision, which can be a little reductive because, I don't know if you guys knew this, but movies are actually made by more than one person. In a great piece for Jump Cut, authors Hayes and Rodman noticed that a lot of press coverage for Django Unchained had an auteurist bias, in large part because, again, Tarantino is such a venerated director, and as such, it often removed creative agency from the black actors of the movie, who also contributed creatively to the final product. Jamie Foxx, Samuel L. Jackson, and Kerry Washington consistently have the most insightful things to say about the production on the film on the press tour because they simply brought a perspective that Tarantino just couldn't on set. And maybe Tarantino's smartest choice of all throughout the whole film was to let them bring it.
When I finished reading it and I said, is this what you want me to be? It's on the page, but you haven't seen him. You've just written him. You haven't seen him. So, are you ready for what this is going to be? And he's like, whatever you bring, bring it. So, I brought it.
And they brought it, man. The reverence that the actors have in discussing the on-set experience of Django Unchained is far from trivial, far from the unserious nature that the film unfortunately sometimes communicates on a surface level.
They were shooting on an actual slave plantation called Evergreen Plantation in Louisiana, and so that lent itself to all of us kind of disappearing into the story because you felt like you were making the film on sacred ground.
It is downright powerful to hear some of their stories, in particular those that stem from shooting on an actual former plantation with real connections to the cast and crew. While this power is not really fully communicated in the film itself, obviously we don't know these things beforehand, I think Tarantino's attempts to modernize the film can be read as him attempting to communicate with the audience some semblance of these real-world implications. I see things like a crash zoom, and my attention is drawn to the camera. I'm made aware of how Django Unchained acts as a movie in the 21st century. I am forced to draw parallels. The impacts of slavery are, of course, still felt in America, and it is a great thing that Tarantino wants to try to dismantle it in its historical and its modern state in the film, possibly using the over-the-top bloodbath at the end of the film as some sort of retribution that still obviously isn't enough. In the film, the Brittle brothers use religion to justify their abuse of slaves. Django shoots him through a page of the Bible. Candy uses quote-unquote science. He is killed in a very similar fashion, being shot through a red and white visual cue that, according to Max Tolien, also connects to Candy's economics. At the moment of Candy's death, the carnation visually signifies cotton, the cotton stained with Ellis Brittle's blood. And that cotton, the cash crop of cash crops, signifies capitalism itself, closest to Candy's heart. The entire ideology is dismantled from every perspective: religion, science, and capitalism, as well as the white guilt of allies. A large part of the discourse surrounding Django, when it was released, asked the question of whether Christoph Waltz's character can be viewed as a white savior. After all, Django essentially needs Schultz to achieve his goals, and Schultz takes him under his wing. There are some pretty unavoidable racial politics at play here, and Tarantino does himself no favors by saying that Schultz is just the older guy teaching the younger guy. But one key feature that distances Schultz from the idea of himself as a white savior is the fact that he dies by screwing up. As the pair's plan falls apart, Schultz loses his composure, his European sensibilities embarrassed that Beethoven is being tainted on the plantation. For most of the movie, he is self-aware, not dependent on slavery as the thing that keeps him in business. And even as he finally reckons with the true brutality of it, he can't help but morally absolve himself in the end at the cost of his friend.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
One more thing that stirred me from the otherwise escapist fantasy of Django Unchained is the seemingly random Rick Ross song that's seemingly thrown in when Django and Schultz are entering Candyland. It feels off at first, a real outlier when it comes to Tarantino, because, he usually drops the needle only for classic rock and roll favorites.
I need 100 black choppers for 100 bad men, 100 black grapes so I can lay their ass.
This song is wholly modern, a seemingly bizarre Baz Luhrmann type anachronism in the middle of what is meant to be a period piece spaghetti western. The answer to this odd question comes from two unlikely sources. The first being A Knight's Tale. We will rock you. Here too, as we see medieval peasants rock out to Queen, we understand that while anachronistic in sound, the film is communicating a wholly period-accurate feeling. The other unlikely source, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's Logan Paul's podcast. Rick Ross explains his process behind the song's creation, and it's actually extraordinarily insightful.
Did Quentin Tarantino approach you for that film?
I was on the set of the film. So during the shootout and shit, I started rapping right then.
No fucking way.
Yeah, 100 black coffee. I saw motherfuckers dying.
Wait, so then did Quentin say, I like that? Can you cut me a record?
Don't stop.
No fucking way.
And I said, it's too easy.
Add to this the fact that hip-hop as a genre is distinctly African-American, with direct ties to enslaved people, and as the audience hears the lyrics, we again reconcile the struggle of the slaves with the modern day. I hardly have the ability to explicate these connections in full, but I will try to leave some resources in the description. It's a powerful scene, made more so by the shot that opens it. So much of Tarantino's work relies on the characters being front and center. And this wide, where none of our main cast is visible, and we only see the group of slaves behind them, is also something that shakes our perspective. One of Tarantino's most vulnerable moments, while speaking about the film, addresses scenes like this.
It's one thing to write exterior Greenville, where the slave auction town was. 100 slaves walked through this deep shit mud in chains, being moved along, wearing masks and metal collars. It's one thing to write that. It's another thing to get 100 black folks, put them in chains, and march them through the mud. And same thing about planting the cotton and putting, army of black folks dressed as slaves in the hot sun, picking cotton in the background. And I started to question, could I do it?
This is the story of one black man, yes. But there is a whole legacy under the surface that one film and one white director cannot deal with. It also helps that he had Sam Jackson there to put him in his place.
Found out they'd been slaves in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and they were scheduled to go into 12 years a slave when they finished being slaves for you.
At the very least, it acknowledges these struggles, and the story about how the song came to be is absolutely one worth hearing.
I said, but you need the hood, because this is like Django is like the hood. So I'm watching Rick and Quentin talk to each other, and I said, Rick, I got it. I said, I'm not a rapper, but I got a song idea for you for this movie, and it should be called 100 Black Coffins.
Fox and Ross provide another example of simply knowing how best to tell the story, and Tarantino making the right call and simply listening. Another perspective that I find highly interesting and valuable is that of Django being uniquely, at least at the time, and if we're honest with ourselves, probably still today, a black hero. A super one in the case of Kerry Washington and several scholars as well.
I said to Quentin in our first meeting, I feel like I want to do this movie for my father, because my father grew up in a world where there were no black superheroes, and that's what this movie is.
Jamie Foxx likes this perspective as well, and It's interesting to hear that despite Tarantino bristling at this relatively anachronistic idea, it's become the dominant one. As Carly Coetzee puts it, their time machine to a slavery past starts off from different stations, and it will arrive slightly differently too. In discussing the film, Tarantino actually seems slightly more concerned about historical accuracy, a noble cause to suggest that slavery's history must be a part of the conversation that people are beginning as cultural dynamics are changing in the United States, according to Rosalind Satchel. But interestingly, at the same time, the film he ended up making, as well as the people of color who helped him make it, simply do not seem to mind a few major historical inaccuracies, whether it be the KKK forming early or a rap song thrown in the middle. It is good that maybe Tarantino entered the making of Django with a little bit more hesitation than you might expect from a guy like him. But it's simultaneously good that upon its creation, he didn't sway from his iconic style. Just this time, he let a few more people with unique perspectives fill that style with substance. Overall, I think this is what makes the film succeed. Tarantino opening the floor to input that he wouldn't have otherwise included. The way people talk about Tarantino sometimes makes it feel like he has an unflinching vision, a Kubrick-style dictator who won't stop until it's perfect, according to him. But it's good to know that he's not quite the filmic deity that some fans make him out to be. And he's more than open to input. We see this in his reliance on Eli Roth for a Jewish perspective in Bastards, and a stunt woman's in Death Proof. It's especially heartening in Django, a film that came with so much controversy and hand-wringing. I don't think it's all sunshine and rainbows. I think the people that worship Tarantino were always kind of going to view the film as a glorious, faultless brainchild of a director who can do whatever he wants. And any backlash from people who took issue with it, black or otherwise, just didn't get it and don't understand that the color behind the camera doesn't matter. Of course, I can simultaneously imagine the right-wing outrage if a movie about a black guy killing a bunch of white people came out today, directed by anybody other than Quentin Tarantino.
And I kill all the white people in the movie. How great is that?
The blogosphere lit up with complaints of reverse racism.
But obviously, the people behind the lens do have an effect on the text, and Tarantino's trivialization of violence can certainly hurt the film's intent, no matter the sensitivity with which it is constructed. Despite the previously discussed attempts to link pre-Civil War era slavery to the 21st century, there's little to go on in the film by way of addressing problems faced by people of color after its abolition, namely segregation or police brutality. Obviously, I haven't the right to defend the film against just criticism of its politics. My intent here is to show the considerations made, to hopefully prove that films can be at least attempting to be conscious of their implications and still be good. Why can't Tarantino just write what he wants? He's the greatest filmmaker of our time. Let him have free reign. Look, pretty much every film is a mixed bag, and this one especially. It's a romance, western, action, comedy. It's a historical film with plenty of historical inaccuracies. It's a mix of Tarantino's mythic, controlling filmmaking style and a surprising amount of leeway given within it. It's a mix of pop culture appeal and politics that will be ignored by many. It's a mix of a black story that by all accounts should be told, and a white director who is maybe the only one who would get the money to tell it. The scene with Tarantino's awkward Australian cameo was derided upon its viewing a little bit, but I think it's actually a good fit, and it reminds me a little bit of the ending of Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. It is good when our leading white filmmakers question their place in telling stories about people different than them. It makes the films better, and I don't think I, along with plenty of other fans of the movie, fully understood that initially. It's why I love watching behind-the-scenes footage and interviews for films. It gives you a little bit more perspective, and I think that's important. I know a lot of this is me reading into things and trying to connect it to ideas of people smarter than me, and trying to get into this little freak's head is pretty much pointless. But hey, I like the movie, and